Hello everyone. It is the middle of the night and I'm preparing this video. This is a Google meeting in which there are no participants apart from me. That means I have two accounts here. The one which I'm using as my mic and and the one in my laptop is for screen presentation. This meeting is being recorded and there is no violation of any Google Meeting recording procedure as I am the sole participant of this meeting. Now, the agenda for today's class is active and passive voice. Now, active and passive voice, guys, is a topic that will remain with you for your entire life as long as you have something related to English. If you write a notice, if you write a letter, active and passive voice must be there. Passive voice is very important when you write official communication. So it is very important, not only from the point of view of exams, but also from the point of view of communication. So in today's meeting, without any delay, let me tell you what is the agenda. The first agenda is we are going to know what actually we understand when we say active voice, or what do we understand when we say passive voice. And once we have understood the meaning of active and passive voice, the definition, the purpose of active and passive voice, the next thing which we are going to understand is transformation from active to passive voice. What are the rules that are necessary to be followed when we transform from active voice to passive voice? And once we have done that, we'll definitely go for a transformation practice of passive voice to active voice. We'll understand the rules here. Now, tomorrow I'm going to take a special class of 9th and 8th regarding the transformation. So this video is kind of an introductory revision for them. It will help you in practice. So without any further delay, let's start. So first thing we need to understand is, what is voice? What do you understand by voice? When we talk about the voice of a sentence, we actually are talking about whether the subject is the doer of the action or whether it is the receiver of the action. For example, if I say, I eat a mango, in this case, we need to see whether the subject is the doer of the action or whether it is the receiver of the action, or whether it is the agent or whether it is the receiver of the action. In this case, we see that I is the subject and I is the doer of the action. The word I, the pronoun I, is the doer of the action. The verb here is eat. The action here is eat. And what is the receiver? Who is the receiver? The object is the receiver. Right? The object is the receiver of the action or the verb. So this sentence must be in active voice. Similarly, in passive voice, we check if the action done must have a user, right? That doer or the agent, is it the subject of the sentence or is it the object of the sentence? So in simple terms, if we understand, voice tells us if the subject is the agent of the action performed or if it is the receiver, right? Okay. Now you can pause this video and rewind it as many times as you want. Now let's move on to active voice sentences. The active voice sentences are those sentences in which the doer of the action is the subject of the sentence. It says if the doer of the action is the subject of the sentence is an active voice. In this case, the object is the receiver of the action. For example, children like cheese. In this sentence, guys, the word marked with red is the subject of the sentence, and the word marked with green is the object of the sentence. And you must see that we have bolden out the verb. So in this case, we will see that children, which is the subject of the sentence, is the agent of the action, the doer of the action. That's why this sentence is in active voice. When the sentence has the doer of the action as the subject of the sentence, we have active voice. Similarly, you will see in the next sentence, Neha has written her letter. In this sentence, Neha is the agent, is the doer of the action, and Neha is also the subject of the sentence. So this sentence is in active voice. Similarly, we have next sentence, the police caught the thief. She has done her homework. We are studying English. All these sentences, we will notice that the words marked with red are the subject and they are the doer of the action. Now, at any point, you may rewind the video, play it as many times as you want. Now, we will move on to passive voice sentences. Since the active voice sentence just stated that if the doer of the action is the subject of the sentence, we have active voice. Vice versa is the case of passive voice. If the receiver of the action is the subject of the sentence is in passive voice. In this case, the object of the sentence is the doer. The object of the sentence is the doer. Understand with the help of an example. Cheese is liked by children. This is just the transformation of the one which we took previously. Cheese is liked by children. In this sentence, we see that children, the word children is the doer of the action. But here, children is in the object position, right? Similarly, look at the next sentence. Neha's letter has been written by her. In this sentence, Neha's letter is the receiver of the action and it is the subject of the sentence. So, as you can see, if the receiver of the action is the subject of the sentence is in passive voice. In this case, the object of the sentence is the doer of the action. Similarly, we have other examples. Her homework has been done by her. In this sentence, we see that the doer of the action, her, is in the object position. So that is why the sentence is in passive voice. Moving on. We have to follow certain rules. We have to understand certain rules. We have to keep in mind certain rules while we transform from active voice to passive voice. First of all, the first rule is the main verb gets transformed to V3. The main verb gets transformed to V3. The subject of the active voice becomes the object of the passive voice. The object of the active voice becomes the subject of the passive voice. So that means for creation of a sentence, subject is necessary, subject is very mandatory. Let's try with the help of an example. See, while we transform from active voice to passive voice, the main verb gets transformed to V3. As we noticed in the passive voice, the main verb gets transformed into the V3 form. Look at the sentence. Cheese is liked by children. We observe that when we transformed this sentence, children like cheese, which is an active voice, when we transform this sentence from active voice to passive voice, the main verb changed from whatever form of verb, V1, V2, V3, V5, we have V5 now, V4 now. So whatever form of verb we have, the main verb gets transformed to V3 form always when we transform from active voice to passive voice. Now the next rule says the subject of the active voice becomes the object of the passive voice. Now, with the help of example, we will notice if we take the example of children like cheese, we saw that when we transformed the sentence from active voice to passive voice, the subject of the active voice, like children, became the object in the passive voice. Look at the sentence. Cheese is liked by children. So here, children, which was the doer of the action, becomes the object of the sentence when we transform from active voice to passive voice. Right? Now, look at the third rule. This is something very important. Very important. And people often joke about this kind of questions. Sometimes when a teacher is inexperienced, a teacher may not be that particular about rules, then someone may be trapped. Students often do this mistake, and the teachers may ask such questions and they will just wait for an answer, wait for the correct answer. They will say, please give me the transformation of the sentence from active voice to passive voice. For I cried, she spoke, come in. Now, in this case, you will see that all these sentences do not have objects. All these sentences do not have objects. Now, it is very necessary to take rule number 3 here. The object of the active voice becomes the subject of the passive voice. Right. Now, it is a point to note that when we transform from active voice to passive voice, subject is necessary while formation of a sentence. Without a subject, there is no sentence possible. There is no possibility of a sentence. So that is why when we do not have objects in the in the active voice, we cannot transform the sentence from active voice to passive voice. Right? All these cases, I danced, the bird flies, they sang, these sentences do not have objects. So that is why passive voice for these sentences is not possible. It says the above sentences have no objects, so the passive voice of these sentences is not possible. Rule number 4. The helping verb indicates the tense of the active voice. The helping verb indicates the tense of the helping verb. Let us understand this rule with the help of an example. Our simplest example, the first example that we took. Children like cheese. This sentence is in simple present tense. Now, we already know that the main verb will be transformed to V3 form when we transform it from active voice to passive voice. So there is no doubt there. Now, in order to indicate the tense of the active voice sentence, we need to take help from helping verbs. That is why when we transform from active voice to passive voice, the helping verb, which is in this case is, indicates the tense of the original sentence. The helping verb for simple present tense, as we saw the sentence was in simple present tense, is. The helping verb for simple present tense is, and that is why we have written is before the main verb, which is in V3 form. Now, at any point, you may repeat the video 1,000 times and understand this. We may not get the concept at once, but please, it is an advice. Try and try and try until you succeed. All right. Now, While we transform from active voice to passive voice, there is an introduction of a preposition that relates the doer with the verb. For example, in the sentence, when we transform children like cheese, which is in simple present tense, when we transform this sentence to cheese is liked by children, the preposition by is added to indicate that children, the word children, which is the doer of the action, we indicate the that the doer of the action is the word children with the help of the preposition by. Similarly, when we transform Neha has written her letter, this sentence is in present perfect tense because we have the has helping verb indicating that it is in present tense, and the main verb written indicates that we are talking about perfect tense. So that is why the sentence Neha has written her letter is in present perfect tense. Now, when we transform this sentence from active voice to passive voice, the object of the active voice sentence should become the subject of the passive voice sentence. If we concentrate on what we are boldening here, Neha's letter becomes the subject of the sentence in the passive voice. So Neha's letter has been written by her. In this case, you will notice that the object of the active voice sentence becomes the subject of the passive voice sentence. Also, we will notice that we have taken two helping verbs that indicate the original tense of the sentence. The original tense of the active voice sentence was present perfect tense. So now we take the help of helping verbs to indicate the original tense. So has is the original present helping verb that goes with Neha's letter, and been is the helping verb that goes with perfect tense for Neha's letter. It should agree with the subject of the sentence. That's why we have Neha's letter has been written. The verb written was the main verb in the active voice sentence. And now when we transform from active voice to passive voice, the main verb has taken the V3 form. And we then we introduce a preposition to indicate that her, that is Neha, was the doer of the action. So that is why when we transform from active voice, Neha has written her letter. When it changes to passive voice, we have Neha's letter has been written by her. We have several examples. The police caught the thief. The sentence is in simple past tense. Now, in order to have a close look at how the transformation is done, let's see how we can do this. See, the first thing we notice is the object of the active voice sentence should become the subject of the passive voice sentence. So we have the thief as the subject of the passive voice sentence. Now, we need a helping verb to indicate that the active voice sentence was in simple past tense. So, the active voice sentence's simple past tense will be indicated by the helping verb was, because was is the helping verb that agrees to third person singular for simple past tense. And then we have the main verb transformed from whatever form of verb we have here to the V3 form. So that is why we have caught, which is the V3 form of catch. It is very advisable that you remember all the three forms of the verb. You need not remember all the five forms, but definitely you should remember V1, V2, and V3. That is the present tense, the past tense, and the past participle tense. Right? And then there is an introduction of the verb, the introduction of the preposition by, and then we have the police, which was the subject of the sentence, the doer of the sentence in the active voice. Now in the passive voice, it has become the object of the passive voice sentence. We have other examples. She has done her homework, which is in present perfect tense. When we transform it from active voice to passive voice, her homework will become the subject of the passive voice sentence, and we need two helping verbs to indicate the original tense of the sentence, present perfect tense. So we have has for present, been is the helping verb we use for perfect tense, and then the main verb done takes the V3 form, and then we have the preposition by to indicate that the action was done by the doer, in this case her, which is the object of the passive voice sentence. Her homework has been done by her. We are studying English. The sentence is in present continuous tense. So I would request everyone to try and answer the question in the comment section. What would be the passive voice of this sentence? Let's see if you have done it correct. English is being studied by us. In this case, English, the word English, which was the object of the active voice sentence, becomes the subject of the passive voice sentence. And then we have the helping verb is that indicates present tense. Being, the helping verb being, indicates continuous tense. And then we have the V3 form of the verb, the third form of the verb study, that is studied by us. So the transformation of we are studying English is English is being studied by us. I killed a mosquito changes to a mosquito was killed by me. I am reading a book, which is in present continuous tense, changes to a book is being read by me. Children are flying kites changes to kites are being flown by children. He plays guitar transforms to guitar is played by him. In all these transformation, point to be noted is that the object of the active voice sentence becomes the subject of the passive voice sentence. The subject of the active voice sentence becomes the object of the passive voice sentence. The main verb of the active voice sentence takes the V3 form. The helping verb is used to indicate the original tense of the sentence, and we add an extra preposition to indicate the agent of the action, the object of the sentence in the passive voice. Thank you. If you want to repeat, please replay the video again. Now, in some cases, we may have the subject of the action hidden in the case of active voices. For example, open the door. It must strike in your mind that the subject here is hidden. When you say open the door, it means to say you open the door. And when we transform this sentence from active voice to passive voice, we have to say let the door be open. Let the door be opened. Cut the apple. That means you cut the apple. Cut the apple gets transformed to let the apple be cut by you? In some cases, you may also observe that it might not be necessary to mention the doer all the time when we transform from active voice to passive voice. Now, this idea will come with practice. Go to school, knock at the door, go to the library. All these sentences, please try the passive voice of these sentences and indicate in the comment section. Now, another point of discussion is if there are two objects in the sentence of the active voice, there is a possibility of two passive voices. For example, look at the sentence, my mother presented me a book. In this sentence, we have one doer. Who presented? My mother, which is the doer of the action in the active voice sentence. Now, this takes the subject form. Now, in this case, you will observe that we have two objects. We have marked them with two shades of green, two different shades of green. The one of the object is me and the other object is a book. So in this case, there is a possibility of two passive voice sentences. In first passive voice, we have made a book as the subject of the passive voice sentence. My mother presented me a book can be transformed into a book was presented to me by my mother. Similarly, when I choose the object me in order to make the subject of the passive voice sentence, I will write, I was presented a book by my mother. He cut an apple with a knife. In this sentence, again, we have two objects, an apple and a knife. The sentence is in simple past tense. Now, when we take an apple as the subject of the passive voice sentence, we use an apple was cut by him with a knife. You will observe that when we choose one of the objects in the active voice sentence to make the subject of the passive voice sentence, the other object remains in the object position when we transform from active voice to passive voice. Please rewind the video anytime you do not understand a topic or a point. My gave me a chocolate. I was given a chocolate by my friend. Now, do you think there is another possibility of making a passive voice? Please write in the comment section below. Let's continue. Now, once we have understood the transformation from active voice to passive voice, we are confident enough to understand the conversion of passive voice to active voice. A passive voice will always have an object. The subject of the active voice sentence is made the object of the passive voice sentence. For example, if we have the passive voice sentence as the tiger was killed by the hunter, which is the passive voice sentence, we observe that the main verb killed is in V3 form. Was is the helping verb which indicates simple past tense. So when we transform from passive voice to active voice, we make the object of the passive voice sentence as the subject of the active voice sentence. So the doer of the action becomes the subject of the active voice sentence as we learned the definition of active voice sentence. So the hunter killed the tiger. In this case, we see that the hunter is the doer of the action. It takes the subjective position. And then we have the verbs in such a way that we have the entire sentence in simple past tense. And how did we know that the sentence should be in simple past tense? With the help of the helping verb of the passive voice sentence. Here in this case, you will see the passive voice sentence has the helping verb was, which indicates simple past tense. Take another example. The mosquito was scared by the chappal. The sentence has the helping verb was, which indicates simple past tense. Now, when we transform from passive voice to active voice, the chappal, which was the which was the doer of the action and which was the object of the passive voice sentence, becomes the subject of the active voice sentence. So we have the chappal scared the mosquito. Here we notice that the mosquito, which was the subject in the passive voice sentence, takes the object position in the passive voice sentence, and then we have the entire sentence in simple past tense because we had the helping verb was, which indicates simple past tense. Let's take some other example. If the sentence is the mosquito is scared by the chappal, we see that the helping verb is. So the active voice sentence should be in, yes, it should be in simple present tense. So then we have the active voice sentence as the chappal scares the mosquito. The breakfast had been finished by her. In this case, please identify the helping verbs. Yes, we have had, which indicates past. We have been, which indicates perfect tense. So the active voice sentence should be in past perfect tense. That's why when we transform from passive voice to active voice, we see that the sentence, the breakfast had been finished by her, transforms to she had finished her breakfast. The sentence now is in past perfect tense, active voice. We have some other examples. The cake is baked by him. Now this sentence, the helping verb is indicates simple present tense. The main verb is baked and it takes the V3 form because the sentence is in passive voice. When we transform from passive voice to active voice, we have he bakes the cake. You will observe the sentence is in simple present tense now because we had the helping verb is, which indicates simple present tense. There are other examples. The book has been read by me. I have read the book. I was given a gift by my mother. Changes to my mother gave me a present. Now, there are occasions when the doer of the action is not mentioned. For example, you sit down on that chair can also be written as sit down on that chair. In this case, we may or may not mention the doer. It may be obvious or it may not need to be mentioned. For example, sit down on that chair gets transformed to let the chair be sat down on by you. You open the door can also be said that open the door, let the door be opened. You may mention by you or it might not be necessary at all times. It is only always a judgment call. It should be always a logical conclusion whether to mention the doer or not. The postman delivered the letter. Obviously, the letter will be delivered by the postman. A doctor does not deliver a letter, right? So we just say the letter was delivered. You might want to add by the postman, but this information is not necessary because it is very obvious that the postman will deliver the letter. So you may exclude the words by the postman, right? The police arrested the thief. Now, obviously, the police would arrest the thief. The thief was arrested. You may indicate by the police, you may not indicate. I hope the session was clear, and in this session we understood what is the purpose of voice, what is active voice, what is passive voice. Then we understood how to transform from active voice to passive voice. After that, we saw the transformation from passive voice to active voice. Please refer to this video as many times as you need. But remember, guys, these are just the rules. Practice is on your part. The ball is in your court now. All the best. See you again. Bye bye.